What happens when one of Hollywood's most fearless spirits, a man who embodies raw energy, pride, and truth, gets pushed just a little too far on live television? It happened on The View. The cameras were rolling. The audience was buzzing, and Jason Momoa, the larger-than-life star known for his thunderous laugh and untamed charisma, suddenly found himself backed into a corner he didn't expect. Before diving into this explosive moment, viewers were urged to subscribe to Talk Narrative and share their thoughts. Because by the end of the story, everyone would have an opinion. It began like any other episode. Bright studio lights glimmered over the round table beneath a golden hue, and the familiar crosstalk of the hosts filled the room as they warmed up to yet another high-profile guest. Jason walked in with his signature swagger. Boots hitting the stage like soft thunder, hair loose and wild, leather bracelets clinking against his wrist. The crowd erupted. He smiled, waved, and flashed that easy grin that made people feel like they were greeting an old friend. Sonny Hostin leaned forward with practiced warmth and welcomed him, mentioning his packed schedule and praising his work on Aquaman 2, along with his environmental activism. Jason chuckled and replied that he was just trying to do his part for the planet, hoping to leave it better for his kids than how he found it. The audience applauded. His words landed with sincerity. That was the Jason people expected, not just a movie star, but a presence. But beneath the surface, something felt different. The energy shifted. Sunny adjusted in her chair and carefully pivoted the conversation. She noted that some critics pointed out a contradiction, while Jason advocates for sustainability. He still flies private jets to film sets and events. She asked whether that sent a conflicting message. The air froze. Even Whoopi Goldberg's expression flickered. She recognized that tone. Jason's smile faltered slightly. His jaw tightened as he glanced between Sunny and the audience. He acknowledged the point, admitting he wasn't perfect and explaining that he tries to offset his footprint by investing in clean energy. He emphasized that the issue wasn't black and white. Sunny pressed further, politely but firmly asking whether fans might still see it as hypocritical, talking about saving the ocean while boarding private jets. A murmur rippled through the audience as tension settled in. Jason leaned forward, his voice dropping, calm but edged with intensity. He suggested that if hypocrisy were the topic, it could be found around the entire table. He stressed that he was doing what he could with the platform he had, and that he felt the weight of that responsibility every day. Whoopi shifted slightly, ready to intervene, but Jason continued. He pointed out that people see clips and photos and assume they know the full story, while missing the behind-the-scenes work funding cleanup efforts and supporting environmental teams. That, he said, was where his focus truly was. Sunny smiled thinly and said, people just wanted consistency. Jason let out a soft laugh, stripped of humor, and asked whether that meant he should stop making movies or quit his job altogether. Silence filled the room, and even the audience's reaction sounded uncertain. He leaned back, exhaled, then spoke again, saying he'd done interviews all over the world and respected tough questions, but this felt different. It felt like a setup. Sunny tilted her head and asked what he meant. Jason paused, then met her gaze and said it felt like a gotcha moment, as if she came in wanting to paint him as a hypocrite instead of hearing him out. He explained that he didn't come on the show to defend his life choices. He came to talk about something that mattered. The audience began clapping, unsure whether they were supporting him or simply releasing the tension. Whoopi nodded slowly, sensing where things were headed, and tried to step in, but Jason gently interrupted. He said he understood holding celebrities accountable, but suggested that attention should also be placed on industries, corporations, and systems, not just one person trying to make a difference while still doing his job. This time. The applause was louder, and more spontaneous. Sunny responded lightly, saying perception still mattered. Jason shot back with a look sharp enough to cut steel, stating that perception isn't truth, and truth doesn't always fit neatly into a headline. The audience erupted again, mixed with gasps. Jason leaned forward, elbows on the table, locking eyes with Sunny. In a low, almost whispered voice, he said that if people wanted consistency, they should start with fairness. The tension was thick, almost cinematic, the kind that comes when people stop performing and start speaking honestly. Finally, Whoopi stepped in, calm but commanding, reminding everyone they were live. Jason leaned back, still visibly tense, a half-smile tugging at his mouth like both a warning and a release. Sunny adjusted her notes and forced a polite laugh. The audience didn't know whether to cheer or brace themselves. When the show cut to commercial, the tension didn't fade, it deepened. The studio lights dimmed slightly, and the chatter of the audience filled the space like static. Jason sat back, jaw tight, thumb tapping against his knee, while Sunny shuffled her notes, preparing for what would come next. Sunny shuffled her cue cards, pretending to read, but her eyes kept flicking toward Jason. A stagehand leaned in and whispered something to Whoopi, who nodded without moving. She felt it too, the unspoken friction pulsing through the air. Jason exhaled slowly, trying to let it go. He had been through tough interviews before, but something about Sunny's tone, that almost smug undercurrent, stuck under his skin. Maybe it was the implication that his integrity was just for show. Or maybe it was knowing that millions were watching, waiting to see if Aquaman would drown under the weight of a pointed question. Producer signaled that they had 30 seconds before going live again. Jason glanced toward the audience, who were murmuring and leaning forward, sensing that the tension hadn't cooled during the break. Whoopi leaned toward him, her voice low and steady, asking if he was good. Jason nodded once and forced a small smile, admitting he hadn't expected that line of questioning. Sunny looked up from her notes and said it was a fair question. Jason turned to her, calm but cutting, and replied that fairness was a matter of perspective. The stage manager counted down. The red light blinked on, and Whoopi smoothly brought the show back. She welcomed viewers and reintroduced Jason Momoa, activist, an environmental advocate, complaining that the discussion had shifted to the balance between fame and responsibility. She noted that many people wondered how public figures handled that kind of pressure. Jason smiled tightly and replied that what they really meant was how public figures handled being judged. Nervous laughter rippled through the audience as the co-hosts exchanged glances. Jason continued, his voice steady but sharp. He talked about spending months traveling to remote communities cleaning up ocean waste, meeting kids who wanted to make a difference but lacked money, tools, or a voice. He pointed out that instead of focusing on that work, the conversation had centered on a single private jet photo pulled from Instagram. Sunny raised an eyebrow and said people cared about both. Jason pushed back, his tone rising just enough to catch every camera in the room, asking whether people truly cared or whether they just wanted clickbait, headlines that made them feel morally superior for a few seconds. The audience reacted instantly. Some clapped, others gasped. Alyssa Farah Griffin leaned forward, trying to diffuse the moment, saying Sunny's point was that his heart was in the right place and people just wanted to understand. Jason nodded slightly and said he understood, but made it clear he wasn't there to be perfect. He was there to make change. And those weren't the same thing. Then he turned back to Sunny, his eyes narrowing just a fraction. He remarked that every time he came on shows like this, he was told they would celebrate the work. But somewhere along the way, it always turned into an interrogation. Sunny held her composure, but pressed her lips together, insisting no one was interrogating him. It was just a conversation. Jason leaned forward, his voice softer now, but heavy with restrained emotion, and said that maybe the conversations should start building instead of tearing people down. The room went silent again. Even the usual nervous laughter couldn't break through this time. Whoopi attempted to redirect the discussion toward Jason's foundation, but Jason wasn't finished. He looked directly into the camera, his voice steady and full of fire, and said that everyone loved talking about what celebrities were doing wrong. But if people truly cared about the planet, they should stop watching others fail and start joining them in doing something right. The audience erupted in loud, passionate applause. Sunny glanced at Whoopi, her expression unreadable, before insisting that no one was questioning Jason's passion-hard questions were simply part of their job. Jason smiled, though it wasn't warm, and replied that it was his job to answer honestly, even when it was uncomfortable. Sunny nodded and said fair enough. From behind the cameras, a producer waved, signaling another commercial break. Whoopi jumped in quickly, laughing lightly as she announced the break and thanked Jason. The audience clapped again, but this time the energy felt uneven, half admiration, half unease. The camera lingered on Jason's face before fading to black. When the lights dimmed for the second break, Jason didn't move right away. He stared down at the table, then slowly turned toward Sunny and said she could have led with the foundation, with the kids, with the real work. Sunny didn't look up as she quietly replied that they could have, but that wouldn't get people talking. The honesty of her words hit Jason like a punch. He nodded slowly, his eyes darkening, and said that it was entertainment over integrity. Sunny responded softly, welcoming him to daytime TV. Jason pushed back from the table, his chair scraping faintly against the floor, the sound swallowed by the hum of the crew moving around them. Whoopi caught the look in his eyes. She had seen that fire before in guests who came expecting conversation and left bruised by the game. But Jason wasn't like most guests. When they came back from break, he wasn't going to hold back. The applause returned as the cameras rolled again, but it felt uneasy now, like everyone in the studio knew something raw and unpredictable was coming. The hosts' smiles looked tighter, their laughter more forced. Jason wasn't smiling at all. He leaned forward, elbows on the table, eyes locked on Sunny. The air between them pulsed with unspoken tension, so thick you could almost hear hearts beating through the silence. Whoopi tried to smooth things over with a lighter tone, reintroducing Jason as a movie star, activist, an all-around good guy trying to save the oceans. Jason nodded slowly, his gaze unwavering. He said that was exactly why he had come to talk about the work, not the noise. Turning to the audience, he spoke about how loud the noise had become, full of judgment and assumptions, while the real work and the real people behind it rarely got the attention they deserved. The audience clapped, sensing his sincerity. As the applause faded, Sunny leaned in again. She acknowledged his work, but reminded him that as a global figure, people noticed everything, the message and the actions. She said that wasn't noise. It was accountability. Jason let out a small, dry laugh and repeated the word accountability before correcting her. He called it selective outrage. When Sunny blinked in surprise, he leaned forward and said plainly that this wasn't about accountability at all, it was about optics. People, he said, loved tearing down someone trying to do good because it made them feel comfortable doing nothing. The audience murmured as the tension thickened once more, electric and unmistakable. Sunny's tone sharpened as she prepared to respond. Sunny shifted slightly, maintaining her composure. She told Jason he couldn't dismiss legitimate criticism as hate, and reminded him that if he wanted to be a leader in environmental causes, people were going to scrutinize him. Jason cut her off without raising his voice. He said he welcomed being held to a higher standard, but asked where that same standard was for politicians, dumping waste into the oceans or corporations poisoning rivers. He pointed out that no one ambushed them on daytime television. Asterisk, the audience burst into loud, sustained applause. Sunny kept her expression neutral, though her jaw clenched. She replied that those issues were discussed on the show as well. Jason nodded slowly, then said maybe they were, but those people weren't cornered on live TV the way he had been. Whoopi looked down briefly, clearly uncomfortable, asked everyone to take a breath. Asterisk, Jason's voice never rose, but it carried a quiet thunder that shook the room more than shouting ever could. He said he supported hard questions, truly, but there was a line between honesty and humiliation, and that line had been crossed. The studio fell completely still. Even the crew stopped moving. Asterisk, Sunny responded calmly, though her eyes flashed. She said he was a public figure and knew how this worked. Jason replied instantly, saying he knew exactly how it worked. You poke, you prod, you twist things until someone reacts, and then that reaction becomes the story. The audience gasped. Whoopi sighed softly under her breath. Asterisk, Jason went on, his voice lower now. He said if they wanted to talk about hypocrisy, they should talk about the entire setup. They preached truth, but packaged it as entertainment. They called it journalism, but half the time it was theater. The audience went silent, everyone holding their breath. Sunny's hand trembled slightly as she adjusted her notes. She asked if he thought he was the only one who got questioned on that stage. Jason leaned back, never breaking eye contact, and said maybe not, but not everyone got cornered for caring too much. Asterisk, the words landed heavy. Silence stretched across the studio, then applause broke out, hesitant at first, then thunderous. Whoopi glanced toward the producers, unsure whether to cut to commercial or let the moment breathe. Jason spoke again, his tone softening as emotion broke through the steel. He said he wasn't angry at Sunny. He was angry at what the world had become, how people had forgotten how to listen, how to talk without tearing each other down. Asterisk, Sunny's eyes softened. She admitted that maybe they both could have handled things better. Jason nodded in agreement. The audience applauded again, slower this time, filled with relief and awe. Jason looked around the studio, then into the camera. He said, if you care about something, don't let anyone make you feel small for it. Even if you mess up, even if you're not perfect, keep showing up. Asterisk, Whoopi exhaled with a gentle smile and said that was the realest thing they'd heard all day. Jason smiled faintly and said he'd never been much for pretending. The red light blinked off, but the energy in the room didn't fade. Everyone knew what had just happened wasn't scripted. It was raw, unfiltered truth caught live on television. Asterisk, once the moment hit social media, it exploded. Clips of the exchange flooded Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok, all asking the same question. Did Jason Momoa just call out The View on live TV? One clip in particular spread like wildfire. The moment he leaned forward and challenged whose view the show really represented. Some called it powerful. Others called it disrespectful. No one could look away. Asterisk, talk radio debated his tone. Fans rallied behind him online, praising his honesty. Critics pushed back, saying that if he couldn't handle tough questions, he shouldn't appear on talk shows. Meanwhile, back in Los Angeles, Jason sat in his home office with ocean air drifting through open windows. His phone buzzed nonstop, publicists, friends, fellow actors, environmental advocates, all reaching out with praise or warnings. Jason stayed silent. Asterisk's headlines rolled in. Entertainment Weekly described a heated clash. People magazine called it candid and confrontational. TMZ labeled it an explosion on live TV. Every outlet dissected every second. Freeze frames of Jason mid-argument became thumbnails for outrage. Clips of Sunny's calm replies went viral too, fueling debates about professionalism versus provocation. Asterisk, behind the noise. Jason sat alone, scrolling through reactions until one post stood out. He didn't snap. He stood up. There's a difference. Jason exhaled slowly, tension leaving his shoulders. That was what he wanted people to understand. He hadn't gone on the show to fight. He'd gone to talk about something real, and somehow it had turned into theater. Asterisk that night. Under the dim glow of his laptop, Jason decided to speak, not through a publicist. Not through an interview, but directly in his own voice. He went live on Instagram. Comments flooded in instantly as tens of thousands tuned in. His hair was tied back, his expression calm, his tone steady. Not defensive. Not performative. Asterisk, I've seen the headlines, he began. I've seen the clips, the edits, the noise. I just want to set one thing straight. I'm not perfect. I never claimed to be.